Data obviously is critical, and the way I coach or the way I look at every player is long-term athlete development. So definitely not an approach of let's just improve this player now and never see that player again. So we're trying to build long-term relationships, long-term plans with these players to achieve what they desire from a sustainability point of view. So in order to do that, looking at their objective data is critical. So we get to look at how they play on the golf course using the circles data. Obviously, I try to get them doing the 5-round evaluation to start with. And that gives me as the coach a beautiful platform to actually identify what aspects they're actually already very proficient with, but what aspects they need their work on as well. And then we can then go ahead about setting the plan and setting the plan going forward from there. And I somewhat always frame it in the sense whereby if a player comes in and we ask them questions about their golf game, often it's very subjective. So they might say, I'm a great driver of the golf ball, but I'm not a good putter. Well, what does not a good putter mean? Does that mean they don't hole enough putts from inside of 5 feet, or they 3-putt too often from outside of 25 feet? It's pretty subjective, and a lot of the time it's very broad, and by no fault of the players, sometimes they're just unaware of where they're actually really good already and where they are actually not quite matching up to what their benchmarks need to be. So I somewhat can show them trends of other players and give them examples of how we've framed that out. And then if I'm meeting the person for the first time, I'll then get them to go away and actually record those 5 rounds for me. So then I can actually then present with them some findings on how they play the game of golf. And in that interim where they're doing those 5 rounds, obviously we're working toward a plan based off their feedback, but we're going to use the objective data to back that up. We'll definitely sit down and assess them and do the evaluation on those areas. And I often then go and attack whereby I explain to the player, well, it's almost 2 lanes of development. You've got a technical lane of development to develop skill proficiency and whatever skill that may be, whether it be full swing, whether it be putting, whatever it may be, the technical aspects. And then you've got the other lane, which is the performance aspect. The performance aspect can then be managed through what they're then doing on the golf course. And obviously, as we all know as coaches, it's not just technique that influences that outcome. It can be a multitude of other reasons as to why those performance aspects don't match up. Sure. So, I mean, the practice logs for me is arguably the most powerful tool of the platform, in the sense whereby it does a couple of things. I build that in the sense whereby every session they do, irrespective of what they're working on, they finish their session with filling in their practice log, or choosing certain drills or certain exercises in that practice log to complete. So even if they're doing a range session where they're working on some full swing technique work, they're going to finish the session off doing some performance work. So picking a target, picking a distance or a dispersion that we're looking at, and trying to achieve their goal, or at least recording down their goal. Now, what that does for them is it gets the player moving from technique practice into more performance orientated practice, or variable training, so not just hitting the same shot all the time. And also it actually puts the accountability on the player to go, okay, I'm now actually working on something that's actually transferable to the golf course from a performance point of view. So myself or the parents, all of the training and all of the development becomes very, I guess, transparent, and the player and the team know what the player is working on.
Gotcha. Awesome. And sort of closes that feedback loop, right? Like they know that information's coming through.
Absolutely. So if the performance isn't improving on the golf course and we don't see any of the practice logging being done, then the questions then go back to the player to say, okay, how are you spending your time on the range? Now, if that player is not logging their practice, it probably means they're not doing that style of training. Therefore, then, yeah, their golf swing may improve, but not necessarily transferring that into a performance state. Well, the beautiful thing with the practice log is you match it back then to the objective data through circles, right? So we can identify that if player A is not getting the ball on the green at a high enough frequency from a certain yardage, then we need to practice that element to improve, to close that gap. I often relate to a lot of the gap analysis. So where are the largest gaps in their game that are going to influence the golf score. So the way I, for a term, almost convince the player to do that is to go, okay, well, hey, if we train this and we log.
What point does that come in?
You do have to have those conversations, but I would say comparatively circles relative to other platforms that the practice logging is very interactive, and the players do enjoy that, because what they're doing is they're seeing there's a goal that they need to achieve, or not need to, the goal that they desire to achieve in respect to the practice logging. So that's encouraging for them to see what they're working towards, and because they're bespoke goals relative to that player, they're very engaged with that. In the past, stats, often the engagement recording stats has been on the coach to keep on the player. Hey, keep your stats up, keep them coming in. But that's more than likely because the player really then doesn't know how to read that data and actually understand how that affects performance. So with circles, I've seen that the compliance is not as much of an issue because they're seeing the collective comparison between the stats, the training, and then receiving the outcome. I mean, so goal setting is often it's pretty subjective to the player, right? Especially if you're looking at youth players. If you ask a player to set goals, very quickly they're going to jump to conclusions around handicaps, performances in tournaments, and ultimately then if I look at goals, that's very much an outcome-based goal. If I want to win a tournament or finish a ranking top 10, for example, that's really nice to have, but then what are the other elements that support underneath that? So if you're looking at long-term success and achieving goals in the long term, we have an outcome goal as what I just mentioned, but then you're going to have performance and process goals that underpin those. So a performance goal is the you versus you, is the way I describe it. So that would be by, if we had some objective data through circles, we can see where they are currently. So for example, if their strokes gained off the tee was minus 1.5, okay, and they need to, so we want to achieve that. We want to bring that strokes gained metric up, okay. The underpinning goal to that then would be the how, the process, and that then goes to the practice logging. So if you want to look at long-term achievement with goals, it's good to have an outcome goal, but then you got to underpin that through the objective data, and we have to have a baseline to work from. So if we've got no baseline to work from, it's pretty hard to achieve the outcome goal. So that's where the long-term buy-in from any player is always going to be. Is sometimes it's hard to see that vision. How am I going to get to that outcome goal? Well, if you just plot away and improve these certain areas in your game, month on month in, month out, then we're going to be there. And again, the process goal is the big one. That's the how. The how am I going to do it? And that's whereby the practice structure and the practice logging is critical. So I mean, so in terms of where circles really benefits is that if someone was to come to myself for coaching and they want to improve, I hold myself accountable to making sure that that player has a plan to be able to improve. So in order to do that, I need the data, I need the objective feedback to allow to make sure from my own point of view that I'm getting the player improving the correct way. If a player was just to come in and I was just to say, hey, how you doing? How's your golf doing? What are you working on? What are you doing? It's subjective from their point of view. We might improve some golf swing elements, but I'm not sure if that's going to improve their golf score. So in terms of my own accountability and the amount that I care for the players, I need this data to be able to go, okay, am I getting that player actually improving? And that's whereby, whether it be using circles data, whether it be other technology, whether it be, and if you're looking at golf swings, we need to be proving through 3D or TrackMan data. So we need metrics to be able for that player to know that, hey, this coach really cares about my development. He's got me moving in the right direction. My scores are reducing. So from that point of view, then not only am I really happy with the coaching I'm delivering, but the players really satisfied with the service they're getting, because they know the coach ultimately just really cares about their development.
Fantastic.
Yeah, decision fatigue is a massive factor, right? And I would say for the most part, golfers don't work on the areas of their game that need the most attention. I think as humans, we avoid stuff that's sometimes hard. So, or we navigate ourselves towards comfort zones a lot of the time. So by using the improvement opportunities that Circles provides, it allows the player to actually, as opposed to maybe diving down towards those, just going and working on the areas they feel comfortable with, it actually takes the decisions out of their hands and says, okay, these are the areas I've got to work on to improve my golf score. Yeah, I'm maybe a little uncomfortable in those areas, but it's identified that those are the areas I need to work on, and then I'm going to get the information from my coach to understand how to develop those skills. My normal hesitations with anything like that is the player's compliance. So is the player going to be compliant to putting the right data in? Is it then going to be feasible for the player and the coach to understand the data that's being presented out or from the user interface point of view? And then how easily can I then implement that into their current coaching and training plans? And very, very quickly, all of those barriers were brought down simply by the practice logging is outstanding. The visual of the radars and the trends through the dashboards are wonderful, so that the player can visually see where they need to work on. And again, going back to decision fatigue, it's right there in front of them on that homepage. They get to see it straight away. So the usability of the platform is incredibly good. So probably those would be the biggest areas, and then it takes down. Yeah, I'd say it's barriers of entry for the player. Players they're a little standoffish at times to want to do stats, but because there is more usability to it, it encourages the player to log the practice. They actually, for the most part, they just really enjoy it now. They enjoy seeing the feedback. They enjoy seeing the trend graphs change around. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we've seen some outcome goals being achieved faster than probably what we thought we would. We've already had some professional wins out there as well. We've had a lot of the both professional players and amateur players alike be able to understand their golf game with more detail. The feedback I've had from the players is that training and that their training's become more efficient. So they're actually, for a term, saving a little bit of time on what they're doing. And where a lot of these guys and girls are time poor, whether it be with school commitments, travel commitments, with tournaments. So their ability to train better is wonderful. But yeah, ultimately we're getting lower scores and we're getting wins. So can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah,
definitely perfect for my youth academy and my junior academy. Like, they just love it. They're all over it. It's engaging. That their uptake on it is obviously very easy, obviously, because they're already really well versed to data. The professional and elite amateurs love it as well. By the same token, I've got a bunch of amateur golfers who float around that, call it 10 to 16 handicap range. And it's really helping them in the sense whereby they're actually identifying areas in their game where to go and practice to change the score, and actually getting the satisfaction out of going, you know what, I don't actually have to grind on my golf swing for X, Y, or Z time. I can actually go and work on my proximity to hole from pitching out of the rough, and I'm actually saving a couple of strokes around. So I'd say, like, your demographic ideally is that 18 handicap and down. But that being said, I think it's feasible for anybody to use, as long as they are willing to actually understand that it's going to expose areas in their game that they need to go and work on. Some people don't want to know. Some people want to run away and hide from it.